You want my love and you can't deny. You know it's true, but you try to hide, yeah. You turn down love like it's really bad. How you can't give what you never had, yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore. That was Earth, Wind & Fire. Can't Hide Love from the Gratitude album. This is your nightly review for Thursday, November 16th. It's being taped around 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The Dow Jones finished down 28 points. It continues to be a very sick market, down 0.2%. S&P 500 is also down 0.2%. And NASDAQ was down 9 or 0.3%. Tokyo's Nikkei was up 1.9. I'm going to get into that in my week in review column. It has to do with currency and easing in Japan. London's FTSE and Frankfurt's DAX were down 0.8%. And gold closed at $17.13, down $16. Oil $85.45, and the U.S. Treasury is 1.59%. The Consumer Price Index for October came out today, up 0.1, up 0.2. Ex food and energy over the last 12 months. The CPI, just like the PPI yesterday, up 2.2. Ex food and energy up 2. Texas Instruments is cutting 1,700 jobs globally. Apple shares were down. Now they finished down 1080. And Walmart was a drag on the Dow today, guided lower for the fourth quarter, for its current quarter. Same store sales were putrid, only up 1.5%, not as good as expected, and their overseas sales, same-store sales, were up just 2.4%, so not a good story for Walmart. In Europe, the Eurozone is back in recession, second time in 4 years. The economy contracted 0.1% in the third quarter. It was down 0.2% in the second quarter. France's GDP, however, was up 0.2 in the third quarter versus being down 0.1 in the second quarter. Germany's was also up 0.2 in the third quarter. It had been up 0.3 in the second quarter. Germany, incidentally, in 2010 grew 4.2%, in 2011 3%. This year it's estimated just 0.8%, and next year they'll be lucky if they grow by 1%. So much for that growth engine of Europe. The Netherlands, by the way, its GDP fell 1.1% in the third quarter over the second quarter. Not good. Decent news, however, in Spain. The EU's Economic Commissioner, Olli Rehn, has given Spain a clean bill of health from the standpoint that it will not need further austerity measures until the end of next year, even though it's going to be substantially missing its deficit targets. A sign that the EU and the folks in Brussels are beginning to pull back from their austerity measures. Now, such an assessment is normally approved by the Eurozone member states, but Olli Rehn, as the EU Economic Commissioner, has very sweeping powers. Mariano Rajoy, Spain's Prime Minister, has repeatedly argued he will not seek a rescue if it comes with further austerity measures. And Olli Rehn said, "We have now concluded for 2012 and 2013 Spain has taken effective action. The box is ticked as long as implementation is solid and convincing." Okay, let's turn overseas. Israel. 3 were killed, 3 Israelis killed in a rocket attack in a southern Israeli town, a direct hit on a house by a missile coming from Gaza. The Israeli Air Force has hit 250 targets in Gaza. At least 15 Palestinians are dead. As of a few hours ago, Israel was reporting that 274 rockets have been fired at Israel since Saturday, including a few today that landed relatively close to Tel Aviv. Iron Dome, the Israeli rocket defense system, has supposedly intercepted 80 of the rockets coming from Gaza. Defense Minister Barak is mobilizing 30,000 reservists. Egypt recalled its ambassador from Israel. Just a few quotes over the past 24 hours. Egyptian President Morsi's political advisor said the Israeli aggression on Gaza was a blow against Egypt. The UN Security Council must shoulder its responsibilities in preserving peace and security in the world. The Grand Imam of Egypt's powerful Al-Azhar Mosque denounced Israel's strikes on Gaza, calling them the Zionist army's bombing of innocent civilians, according to Egyptian and Saudi sources. However, the Grand Imam said Palestinians in Gaza had a right to live safely like any other human beings, but at the same time, of course, never mentions or refers to the 274 rockets fired against Israel, and we're now talking well over 800 just this year. Very worrisome developments in Jordan. There have been riots, unprecedented public anger over a cut in fuel subsidies. King Abdullah, of course, is the West's chief ally in the region, outside of Israel to some. The fuel subsidies were cut because Jordan's huge budget deficit and the need to secure a $2 billion bailout from the IMF. I mean, understand that Jordan is on its 4th prime minister this year. Abdullah has called for early elections in January, but this might not be enough to, I'm sure it won't be enough to placate the masses. There are 200,000 refugees from Syria now in Jordan, and of course they're just straining Jordan's very limited resources. 200,000. And extremists like the Muslim Brotherhood are taking advantage of the crisis. I was in Jordan for a week in 2008. I hired out a driver for the whole time, went all over the country. Petra was cool. The Roman ruins were awesome. But I also saw some Palestinian refugee camps, which spooked me out. And I did get to the Jordanian-Syrian border, which is the Golan Heights, to a large extent. Golan Heights are beautiful. If I was Israel, I would never give them up from a strategic standpoint. You really, from a distance, get a perspective of how, if Syria controlled the Golan Heights today, you really do fire straight down on Israel. Speaking of Syria, France's foreign minister hinted the Syrian rebels could get defensive weapons for the rebel-held areas being bombed by Assad's forces. Of course, Russia opposes assistance to the opposition. The UN is now saying 4 million Syrians will be in desperate need of aid by next year. In China, so Monday, I told you, Hu Jintao, in a surprise move, was relinquishing the top post at the Central Military Commission early to make for a smoother transition. That was Monday. I told you that on my nightly review. Tuesday, I told you a New York Times report by Jane Perlez poured cold water over that theory, saying Hu would likely stay another 2 years. I then told you Tuesday that I'm siding with those saying Hu is leaving. Well, he did leave. Score one for moi. Of course, when I'm wrong, don't worry, I'll admit it. I'll be wrong an awful lot. I have been wrong an awful lot over the almost 14 years I've been doing this. But I read over 20 sources a day from around the world and then come up with my own judgment. Anyway, today, Xi Jinping took over formally as General Secretary of the Communist Party and Chairman of the Commission overseeing the People's Liberation Army. Xi thus leads a 7-member standing committee of the Politburo, which is the decision-making committee for China. It runs the country. Li Keqiang, presumptive premier, I need to practice his name more. Xi and Li. Xi will be president, Li will be premier, and they will both assume their government post in March at the National People's Congress. Here's the problem. Of the other 5 members of this standing committee, they are very conservative. No room at the table was made for 2 known reformers, nor the leading woman on the Central Committee. These other 5 are all older and technically reach retirement age after the first 5 years. They are 66, 67, 65, 64, 66 right now. So you'll probably see another transition in 2017 with some of these standing committee members who then you would think 1 or 2 of them would be in line to take over for Xi, assuming he has good health the next 10 years. He is 59. He certainly should prove to be more charismatic than the stiff Hu. And some of you may be aware that Xi has a pop star as a wife. She's a very popular singer in China and very attractive. But we have no idea on what kind of ruler Xi is going to be. I'm very optimistic, but you do have all these hardliners surrounding him. The first test is going to be over Japan, most likely, and the dispute over the islands in the East China Sea, which Japan calls the Senkakus and China calls the Diaoyus. What is helpful is that Xi already controls the military and doesn't have to wait until the spring. So Hu did him a favor. But now that he's in charge from day one, we are likely to find out just what kind of leader he's going to be in terms of dealing with the United States in fairly short order. As for the U.S., Defense Secretary Panetta is on a trip to Thailand, Cambodia, and Australia to strengthen our alliances. President Obama is going to Cambodia, Thailand, and Burma end of this month. The trip to Burma is going to be most interesting. I'm critical of the Obama administration, but on the issue of Burma, thus far, they have played it brilliantly. And if they can turn Burma into an ally of the U.S., That is really going to irk the heck out of China. But back to Xi, just a few of his comments from his press conference yesterday. He said the party's trust and people's expectations are a source of tremendous encouragement for us and put enormous responsibility on our shoulders. The people's desire for a better life is what we shall fight for, he said. His main job is to steadfastly take the road of prosperity for all. He said the ruling Communist Party would be proud but not complacent, and we will never rest on our laurels. Xi said the party suffered from problems of corruption, taking bribes, being out of touch with people, and undue emphasis on bureaucracy and formalities. Our journey ahead is long and arduous. Xi said we must always be of one heart and mind with the people. Zhang Lifan, a historian who has links to some of China's leaders, told the Washington Post that with the two leading reformers being excluded, some people who were originally holding off going abroad to emigrate may even start their plans sooner. I thought that was an interesting comment. British Petroleum is having to pay a fine of 4.5, let me back up, a settlement of 4.5 billion with the U.S. government over the 2010 explosion and oil spill in the Gulf that claimed 11 lives. BP is thus pleading guilty to criminal charges related to the deaths of the 11, as well as lying to Congress. The figure includes nearly 1.3 billion in criminal fines, the biggest criminal penalty in U.S. history, along with payments to certain other government entities, including 2.4 billion to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, 350 million to the National Academy of Sciences, and 500 million to the Securities and Exchange Commission. A federal judge in New Orleans is still weighing a separate proposed 7.8 billion settlement between BP and more than 100,000 businesses and individuals harmed by the spill. Penalty is going to be paid over 5 years. BP made a profit of 5.5 billion in the most recent quarter. The largest previous corporate criminal penalty assessed by the U.S. Justice Department was 1.2 billion, imposed on Pfizer in 2009. Well, that's all for tonight. I'll be back with you next Monday. Remember, I write Week in Review on Friday, post it Saturday morning. Keep the men and women of our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. For more stuff, go to stocksandnews.com. I do have to close in acknowledging R.A. Dickey, the first knuckleballer to win the Cy Young Award. Us Mets fans are very proud, aren't you? Aren't you, little buddy? Age 38, just an incredible story. He's an incredible person. Talk about a role model. Just 2 years after being cut by the Mets in spring training, wins the Cy Young Award. So congratulations to R.A. Dickey. Now we'll see if the Mets trade him. Take care.